Undead soldiers, skeletons, dragons, a fat guy wielding a giant hammer. If any of this sounds interesting to you, then allow me to introduce you to Dark Souls. A game about fighting big, bad guys just to obtain souls so you can fight bigger, badder guys. Fight more bosses. I absolutely love this game, however, unlike the last two games, it has just as much bad as it has good. As stated before, this is one of my favorite games ever, so I have quite a few good things to say about it. First is combat. This game has very good combat, not to mention variety. Whether you're using a shield and a long sword, a two-handed giant club, or cosplaying a samurai using a katana and full Easterner armor, most of the weapons are viable. I'm looking at you two. You know who you are. In Dark Souls 2, and even more so in 3, not as many weapons are viable, but in the first one, you can use almost anything. Almost. The second good thing is interconnectivity. Now, what does that mean, you may ask? Well, it just means the map is connected in different spots so that you can end up in one area and show up in another. The map is so connected that if you're lost, if you just keep following the path forward, you'll probably end up back somewhere that you recognize. For example, towards the beginning of the game, you can pick up a key in the Undead Parish that can be used in a door right after the first real boss. This door leads to Lower Undead Burg. The boss of this area drops a key that leads to a door at the end of the area. This leads to the Depths. After the boss of the Depths, you get a key that leads you down to Blighttown. From Blighttown, you can make the climb up into the Valley of Drakes, and from there, walk into New Londo. New Londo, in and of itself, being a late-game area. From New Londo, you can find an elevator that leads back up to Firelink Shrine. And that's not even considering the shortcut that leads straight from the Depths to Firelink. The last thing I'd like to talk about is how the game does healing. The first Dark Souls invented the Estus Flask trope. Most Souls games nowadays have some kind of item like this, whether that be the Bile Flasks from Blasphemous or the Dragon Hearts from Remnant. The idea of regenerating healing items at checkpoints makes it so that you can attempt bosses as many times as you like without having to farm for healing items. I'm looking at you, Bloodborne and Demon Souls. I've said it before, I'll say it again. With the good comes the bad. I'm going to get this one out of the way early so that we just can move on and not talk about it again, but the first bad thing is difficulty. This game can be very hard. Emphasis on the can. People know this game for being difficult, but it isn't unfair. Every time you die from a boss, it's a mistake on your half. Or a bad hitbox, but that comes with being an older game. Not to mention, every time you die, you hopefully learn something from it about either the area that you're exploring or the boss. Like, oh, I died to the rat over there, so let's avoid that rat, or be ready for it next time. Stuff like that. The second thing is the late game. The later game is a little more lackluster than the early game. Areas like the Catacombs and Lost Izalith just aren't as good as the great golden city of Anor Londo. Same thing goes for the bosses of those areas. Would you rather be fighting Ornstein and Smough or down platforming in the bed of chaos? Finally, we talk about the movement. This game, similar to Metroid, feels very slow and clunky, especially compared to later Souls series. This makes coming back to Dark Souls 1 after playing Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne, for example, it makes it very difficult. And now it's time for the strange. Starting first is the multiplayer. It's not as simple as loading into a lobby and joining someone's world. First, you have to be human. I'll get into humanity in a minute. Then your friend, or whoever you want to play with, has to put down a summon sign on the ground. Then you have to find that sign and summon them. Then they will have half Estus and they can help you defeat the boss. They get one free humanity sprite and become human in their world. It's just a weird system that's a little hard to get the hang of, plus sometimes servers are weird and don't like to work. Second is the story of the game. Now, since I'm going to talk about the story, you know the drill. Skip to this time if you don't want the game spoiled, but the plot is so weird and hidden that even if you did listen to this part, I don't think you'd be spoiling much for yourself. The plot for this game is so wild and convoluted that I'm not even going to try to cover it in this one video. You're the chosen undead. You have to succeed Gwyn by linking the flame and lighting yourself on fire. But there's so much more to this story. But you have to get it through item descriptions and boss souls, which it's all right if that's what you're, into, but it's not what I'm looking for in a game. So if you'd like to learn more about the story, I'd recommend going and either checking out Vadividya or the Ashen Hollow. They both have great in-depth looks at the lore. Vadividya focuses more on specifics, and the Ashen Hollow has a lot more on broader topics. Finally, the weight system. Oh boy, the weight system. So how this works is all armors and weapons you have currently equipped have a weight. Items in your inventory do not count towards this weight, but anything you have equipped, whether you're holding it or not, does. You have a carry limit, but it's not a hard limit. Instead, if you're under 25% of your max carry weight, you'll be able to dodge roll with ease. This is what you'd call a light roll. If you're between 25 and 50, you'll roll a little more sluggish. This is what you'd call a medium roll. This is about the baseline for most people. If you exceed 50%, then you don't roll as much as you just kind of fall on your shoulder. This is what we'd call a fat roll. Then for some reason, if you need to keep going over mid-roll and then you go over the weight limit, you just don't roll. You kind of nudge yourself forward. The Souls community doesn't have a name for this one, but you shouldn't ever need to go over medium. So for my closing thoughts, I cannot recommend this game for everyone. These games take a lot of patience and stubbornness to enjoy. It took me 3 separate attempts and over 2 years to finally pick up and enjoy this specific title, and ever since I have at least tried every other From Software Souls game. So I think I'm going to go with at least try it.